this may sound a little hokey, but well, I wrote a song and I'd like to make a record of it just for you.
How's it going, everybody? This is Dailies to Downloads. We're back with you for another episode here. With me, as always, is Erik, still shaving. Still...
That's how you know we don't shoot these too far apart, so we can't. Imagine if like every episode it's like, oh, 1 week has gone by, now I have a beard. You're like, okay, you guys are not shooting these chronologically, or maybe we could do a costume change. I'll think about it going forward.
Yeah, we probably need to do that. So this week we are going to talk about what might be a recurring series on best movies never made. So there are so many movies out there that were started or rumored or talked about, or even scripts were written for them, or even development started on it, or even casting, but ended up getting scrapped or shelved or forgotten for whatever reason. It's always one of my favorite topics. I have a couple books about, some of the best movies that were not made. So we're going to talk about one of them, or actually this is kind of two in to a degree, but we're going to talk about one of them this week. And we're going to focus on Martin Scorsese, who has a lot of movies that were rumored or talked about over the course of his career that didn't happen. But specifically this one was, well, it starts with Frank Sinatra, I think. He was going...
That's how far back that you know this project goes.
Yeah. It starts with Frank when he was alive. No, actually, so Scorsese wanted to make a biopic on Frank Sinatra because obviously Sinatra has, had a very interesting life, and he went and met with the estate, and what turned out to happen was they didn't agree to the way he wanted to film it. And this could be a whole topic, Erik, but they didn't like Scorsese's warts all approach. He, being who he is, wasn't going to pull any punches. He was going to tell the story how it is. And, everybody has flaws and so on and so forth. And that was how he was going to approach it. But they didn't like that. And so it didn't happen. And we see this a lot today with biopics. The person who is in charge of the estate is a producer. And whenever I see that, I always, my heart sinks a little bit, because then I know I'm getting a specific version of the events and not, a different version of the events.
Pre-approved,
Like on the other hand, you have a movie where they don't get the approval of the estate. And so therefore, if you're talking about a certain celebrity, like a musician, they can't use the rights to the songs, like the recent David Bowie one.
Yeah.
Which is called, Erik, help me out here.
Stardust?
Stardust. Is it called Stardust?
Yeah, not to be confused with the other Stardust movie.
Yeah, not the one with Michelle.
Fantasy movie. No.
But yeah, so that movie's coming out and it doesn't have any David Bowie songs in it. So, what do you think about that? It's kind of like a double-edged sword. You want to see a biopic, you want to see a good performance of somebody, but you end up getting a, through rose-colored glasses version of the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's always the risk you run of, like, you want to, and I think most filmmakers try to have it both ways, in that they are obviously going to say that they want to not sugarcoat things, but they also want to honor the legacy. These kind of vague sentences about they want to honor them, but not sugarcoat it. And then I think that's how you would normally get the estate to kind of, to agree if it is something about like songs and things like that. On the other end, yeah, I do think that if just because you're having a family member or something more involved in the production, you said if they get an executive producer credit or whatever, that's also in a way kind of frightening, because you don't want to have to do it to be approved by someone else before it comes out to audiences, because then, I do think that that's tricky. I mean, I know that, like, in a very weird example, like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like Tarantino did like reach out to like Sharon Tate's sister
All
to
right.
like their approval. And obviously the movie is obviously not an authentic retelling.
Right.
And actually I can kind of understand why she gave her approval based on what happens in the movie, I guess.
Right.
But that's a outlier of a case. Usually it's a quote unquote by the numbers, bullet points life, and if it isn't going to be a adoring, I guess, somewhat sanitized version of that, then yeah,
You kind of
sometimes
see it both ways, like
yeah,
I understand from the perspective of a person who runs the estate, it's in many ways, it is a business for them. They want to make money. They want to, and by doing so, they need to protect the legacy and the reputation of whoever they represent.
yeah,
And if they were to put something out there that reveals flaws of a person that maybe not everybody knows, then that could affect the legacy and therefore the funds coming in for, a great deal of time. And so, I mean, I get that, but it is, it's upsetting because that he would have knocked that one and the other one we'll talk about here in a second out of the park. And I heard the rumor was that he wanted to get Leo to play Frank Sinatra, which makes sense. I guess, I can't think of somebody off the top of my head that would be a better pick. I mean, for that.
Yeah. I mean, it could work.
It would depend on if he was singing or not. I don't know if Leo can sing, but.
Yeah. No, I mean, probably not well or not much. But they, even that you can kind of get around, like if you want to do the whole lip syncing kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, and I think with Scorsese it's interesting too because there are certain projects that he was a little bit more of the for hire kind of brand, and so like,
right,
yeah, if you were to hire him, you would know somewhat what you're getting. I mean, there are obviously going to be surprises, but it's obviously not going to be, I imagine, the sanitized, complete family estate approved version. So
right.
if that's not what they want, then obviously for that purpose of protecting the brand, then yes, I could see why they did not.
And they've done some Sinatra stuff over the years, as far like there was a mini series and things like that were okay. But it would have been cool to see what Scorsese would have brought to the table for that. And on a side note, there's a biopic coming out next year called Reagan, which is about Ronald Reagan. And there is somebody that has just signed on to play Frank Sinatra because I guess he performed at an inauguration or something. And that person is Scott Stapp of Creed is going to play Frank Sinatra.
Oh, so I thought he was going to play Reagan. I mean, either is kind of strange, but okay. Yeah.
How random is that? Scott Stapp as Frank Sinatra. But
I wonder if it's just like a 5-minute.
I doubt he'll have.
He's in the background singing.
I doubt he'll have a monologue.
Yeah. It was originally going to be somebody from System of a Down, but they had to step out, so they got this guy on.
Serge was I can't forget his last name. He was the second choice after Scott Stapp. But yeah, so
I mean, I feel like we haven't really seen a film, to my memory, where someone is playing Reagan. Really?
Well, in that movie, The Butler.
I guess yeah.
We had Alan Rickman playing Reagan, and he did an okay job in it. One thing I could say about that movie, which I didn't like, but the actors who played the presidents did a pretty good job overall.
Yeah, and I think with Reagan, because he was obviously a movie star,
right?
It's probably hard, even that adding that onto it, where that even becomes even more difficult to have somebody recreate that. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Have they announced who's playing Reagan?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Well, so another project that Scorsese was going to do but didn't was actually a movie about Gershwin, but that didn't happen. And I guess what happened was he turned in a script to Warner Brothers about Gershwin, and they said, we'd rather do one on Dean Martin. And so, he, I guess, ultimately gave in to this, and he and Nicholas Pileggi, I don't know if I'm butchering that name, but they actually wrote a script about Dean Martin, and I don't know. One of the articles I see has it called Dino, which I don't know if that was going to be the title or not.
Are you
But
sure, Gina, it's not a Flintstones
right,
biopic?
people go to the theater, they're disappointed. I thought this was something else.
Scorsese sent in a script about the wrong Dino. It was a big mix-up.
But according to Martin Scorsese, they really worked hard on it. And I don't know how verified this is, but they had an all-star cast lined up for it. And the notable one, and it's a shame we never, at least for now anyway, we never got to see these two work together, but Tom Hanks was going to play Dean Martin. And that was the big one. Can you see that? I could sort of see that. I mean, Tom can pretty much do any type of role, but it would be weird. I feel
It'd probably be like maybe, I don't know, some prosthetics or I don't know, depending on how far into the look and how much of he was supposed to look like him versus just the going for the aura and the presence.
Right. True.
That might have worked.
Yeah, and a lot of times people rope this movie into like Scorsese's Rat Pack movie, like he was going to make a Rat Pack movie, but in reality, it was going to be a biopic on Dean Martin.
Yeah.
And another person they had Jim Carrey apparently lined up to play Jerry Lewis.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could see some of these. You don't know whether to take it with a grain of salt, like whether this is just gossip, speculation thrown out there.
Or how far it goes, down the pipeline.
Scorsese is quoted to saying that Tom Hanks was going to do it. He was going to do it. Now, these other ones that I'm going to mention, who knows how true that is. John Travolta as Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
That's another weird one. Hugh Grant as Peter Lawford.
Oh.
And Adam Sandler as Joey Bishop.
Really?
Can you imagine all those? I can't see all those guys in a Martin Scorsese movie. I just can't.
No, especially
not together.
Yeah. Especially not on whenever this would have been, I guess. If this were to come out whenever it was,
Right. So he did an interview about this project when he was promoting The Aviator. Okay. So I guess it would be around that time, a little bit before that time. But I guess what ended up happening, there was some rights issues and estate issues there, I guess, that made the Dean Martin project not happen. But they did say that they worked hard on it, but he said that Dean Martin's life wasn't easy to do, because I guess towards the end of his life, he, to quote Scorsese, he's like, we tried, but he seemed to pull back in life. And they wanted to do, I guess, a bunch of different things. Kind of like, it sounds like there was a little bit of that warts and all approach to this one as well, that maybe not everybody was super happy about.
I guess one thing, as long as it's about a famous singer, musician, whatever, that music rights issue will always be something. The only other workaround I think I could see is that a lot of these biopics are based on a biography.
Right.
And maybe legally that's sometimes, again, if it's a musician, you're still going to need to go through extra hoops to get that right. But in other cases, I feel like by being based on another person, an author's work, I feel like that's often how we see the biopic route go, that it's based on a source material that's already kind of gone through a lot of those, I imagine, legal hoops. But writing a biography, that's totally fine to do. It's you're in your rights to be able to do that. So, and
then it's whether or not is everything in the biography true.
I mean, that's gonna happen no matter what.
Right.
But
yeah. So he was excited to do it because I guess beyond the Rat Pack thing, there was the relationship that Dean Martin had with Jerry Lewis and how that worked out. And so it would have been interesting to see this, based on what he did with The Aviator and the Howard Hughes approach. And, I liked The Aviator a lot. So what do you think, Eric? Do you think this would have been a movie that it could have worked, or, are you more of the mindset, whatever is meant to happen is what happens?
Well, no, I mean, I do think that it definitely could have worked. And I feel like you would probably, because Scorsese is probably obviously younger, but of one of our last remaining filmmakers who are somewhat not of that period, but he would have been a child though while they were in their heyday. So I feel like after this kind of crop of filmmakers leave us, I think we're further away from ever getting like something on Dean Martin. Yeah, and Frank Sinatra, I feel like is always just going to be tough to tackle unless you go the route of like in the Godfather, they created that character, the Johnny Fontaine singer character, and some people say that's based on Frank Sinatra without actually
Right.
Can't call him Frank Sinatra, but that's kind of what it was based on. And obviously with Sinatra's mob ties,
And obviously that was going to be a part of it. The Frank
yeah,
Sinatra one anyway, like that was going to be a part of it. And, you know, I can understand why they might not want to draw attention to that part of his life, but it was there. So
absolutely, yeah.
right.
So yeah, I think that could have worked, and especially when you mentioned if the subject is getting more and more pushed back and either maybe a little bit more reclusive. I mean, The Aviator is a good example of complete recluse and being completely pulled back. But of course, his life was so documented,
Right.
including speaking of biography, including a fake biography, which
Right.
became its own movie called The Hoax.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it definitely could have worked. But I obviously at this point he's going to be 80. I think it's not going to happen. And I don't. It's going to be hard to see some filmmaker, newer, younger, taking that on.
Right. Like who would be passionate enough about it to take it on the way he would have done it. I mean, obviously it would have been a long movie and it would have tried to focus on as much of either Frank's or Dean Martin's life as possible. But yeah, like you were saying, like it's almost, there's been documentaries on both of these guys, but it's almost like it would be better based on how full of a life they had. It would almost be better to do like a Last Dance type documentary on some of these guys. You could easily do that. And to a degree, I think some people warrant that more. As much as I would like to see some of my like great actors play these roles, if you want to give their life it's due, then you kind of have to cover a lot of ground.
Yeah, and Scorsese does those 4-6 hour documentary kind of things.
Right.
And just thinking of one other sort of example, again, I do think it helps if you already have like a pre-made property, and by that I mean it was so easy for like Eastwood to adapt Jersey Boys for the screen,
right?
Because it was turned into a Broadway musical,
right?
And so all those hoops and everything was already done. And Eastwood just was like, oh, I like the Broadway show. I like the Four Seasons. We can do this very quickly. It's all kind of it's pre-packaged for me, and that it happens like that. So if there was ever like, I don't know, a play or is it like a book or something, I feel like then that would make the process somewhat easier.
Like if you look at Secret Honor, the Robert Altman movie, which is not a biopic on Richard Nixon, but that was a play, right?
Yeah.
And I like it a lot. But
even
like you were saying,
Frost Nixon, also a play,
right?
With the Broadway actors, Frank Langella and Michael Sheen.
Yeah, there you go.
So then they just took them from the Broadway show and put them in the movie. So it's possible, or it would have been. Again, Scorsese's going to do that Flower Moon film, and we don't know how much time we have left with him. So I'm sure it's
which is a shame because like I would have loved to have seen what type of performance he would have gotten out of somebody like Tom Hanks, and I would have been interesting. It would have been interesting to see that. So. Yeah. So, Eric, if you had to vote, is this a movie that you wish we would have seen, or is it one that you could live without? If you had to pick.
For me personally, I could live without it just because of my own ignorance, I think, of not knowing enough about their own personal lives all that much.
Right.
And that's, hopefully I'll change that eventually. So it's not for a lack of, like, obviously I would see it, but it wasn't something that I was craving because I have never been as involved in a lot of their own personal history, probably because we haven't gotten a movie about that. That might have actually led me down the road of wanting to do more of that research. So it's the tail wagging the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail? Like, maybe would the movie have inspired me to learn more, or did I, et cetera, et cetera. So I
Right.
definitely watch it, but I would gladly read about it as well, and then
Right.
come back to me. Then maybe I'll say, "Oh man, this would be a great movie."
Yeah, I know. For me, I would agree. I would probably leave it as well, but I'm probably a little bit more on the fence with it than you are, simply because the biggest sticking point for me is the fact that Tom Hanks, being my favorite actor, and working with who is one of my favorite directors, that hasn't happened. It would have been so great to see that, and I don't see that happening. And at this
Hey
point,
man, yeah. I mean,
anything's possible, but
I never thought De Niro and Scorsese were going to get back together. Happened. Now they're going to do another one together. Also, this is like, in terms of in talking about the projects that didn't happen, but they were talked about for a while. There's also that weird gray category of projects that were spoken about for a while with a certain director who it was in like development hell, and then they left, and then some other director came on and it got made. Like, I remember for
right.
a while there was talk of a Star is Born remake that Clint Eastwood was going to direct, and like Beyonce was going to be this.
Yeah, I feel like there were two different ones being talked about at the same time.
Was it?
There,
I think even Leonardo DiCaprio was maybe spoken about then. It was like Leo and Beyonce, or maybe at that point if Bradley Cooper was already in the
Mm,
conversation. But it was going to be Eastwood, and you could totally have seen it. It'd be a different kind of movie, but that would totally have been within Eastwood's wheelhouse, and
right.
et cetera. And it came together, but just not with Eastwood and not with Beyonce. But it was another big mega pop star. And
Yeah, I mean, movies like that. There's so many of them. Movies that start one way with a certain type of cast,
yeah,
and then develop. They might not get off the ground, but then it develops into something completely different.
like a director finally gives up and kind of like leaves a project, or like Scorsese was notorious for like we were talking about last time, right? Like Silence and in Gangs of New York, like they were originally talked about like 20 years earlier,
Right.
and it was always because I think they were based on novels. On that, those were like the source material. It
Right.
was always just like uh, maybe will someday happen, but probably not. And then it finally did, but you just didn't. Spielberg, I remember wanting to make Lincoln with like Liam Neeson. Uh,
Yeah.
Back in
Yeah.
the 90s, and obviously that didn't happen, but he still got to eventually make it, and it turned out to be so maybe even better.
And that's why
Better.
this is such a fascinating topic to me, because I mean, and we would never cover this movie as a part of this, but like, on the topic of Spielberg, he ended up making one of Stanley Kubrick's
Yeah, yeah,
movies,
yeah.
and we'll certainly do one on Stanley Kubrick at some point, because he has a big one that was never made. But AI
Yeah,
was his script,
yeah.
and he wanted Spielberg to do it because he wasn't able to do it, I guess, or
I
didn't
think.
want
I
to.
mean, I think he passed away in late '99. I think
Yeah.
summer of '99, right when Eyes Wide Shut came out, or right before Eyes Wide Shut came out.
Right.
And I think that was the case of like Kubrick had this script for a while, and then I guess when he was dying, I
I
guess.
can't even imagine
Yeah.
I can imagine, I guess, a little bit what it would have been like if he had directed it himself when he
Yeah.
wanted to. But obviously the technology, when he was really on his game and making movies on a semi-regular basis, the technology hadn't really caught up with what that script is.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. I imagine there'd be somewhat the 2001 Space Odyssey, not the year in which AI actually did come out, but 2001 kind of special effects which were also still ahead of their time. And yeah, I guess that's also the idea of bringing the topic even larger. I guess is that idea of like for the Aviator and things like that. Like Leonardo DiCaprio is the one spearheading the project, and then he brings it to like his preferred director.
right.
And so that also helps sometimes get something off the ground and go into get the green light and move forward. Uh, the Aviator, I don't think was a Scorsese. I mean, it makes sense with Scorsese themes in the old Hollywood, but I don't think that was a project that originated with him. I think it was Leonardo DiCaprio, and then he brought Scorsese because he wanted him to
Right.
be involved.
No, yeah, yeah.
So we need an actor who's like really hot right now, who needs to make this, Dean Martin, or Frank Sinatra kind of biopic, and that'll do it. And then maybe it'll go to.
I don't know. I
don't know.
Some of the actors that are hot right now, I can't see them in the role, or I personally wouldn't want them. Like, I don't want to see Chris Evans play Dean Martin.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess that is even like Elvis. Like, we got the John Carpenter, it was Kurt Russell, right? Yeah, as Elvis.
Kurt Russell and Kevin Costner.
Yeah.
3,000 Miles to Graceland.
Not that. No, not that. What am I? Oh, I'm gonna Google this very quick.
Oh no, Kurt Russell was in.
Wasn't there like a TV movie that John Carpenter did?
Yeah. I'll put the title up here, but
it was Kurt Russell. Yeah, 1979.
He's a hard one, and there's been a ton of performances over the years, and Matthew Rice, Jonathan Rice Myers. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He did like it was made for TV miniseries. He has such a distinct speech pattern, and his voice is so distinctive. Like, when you get into territory, and like, my gosh, he's more than an icon. So people like that are really tough to do.
Yeah.
And his estate is like, my gosh, it's its own little country within a city.
Great spot. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So people like that are tough to do, and like they're not just going to allow anything to be made. Although over the years there have been performances of him there that have showed him doing drugs and whatnot. The Sun Records show that was unfortunately too short certainly went into a little bit more detail about stuff like that. But Walk the Line. Walk the Line was the movie where you see him doing drugs. Yeah.
I guess that's Elvis is so iconic in that, like, we also have so much filmed material of him too, that it's just hard. Like, Lincoln, like, we don't have any record. We can see how he looked in photos, but we don't have any audio of him. We don't have so those, I think, were a little bit more.
Elvis, I doubt anybody's going to make anything else about Lincoln, unless it was like but maybe about a specific point in his life that wasn't covered, but after the biopic we saw, like, I don't know why anybody would want to go.
Yeah. And even that was essentially about that amendment.
Right.
The ratifying of that amendment. So even that wasn't like the John Ford, Henry Fonda one, which is not very good. The Young Mr. Lincoln, which is a little bit more of a life story.
Right.
I feel like you can kind of get away with it more. Other than that, I guess you.
But so this is like an endless topic that is it's fun. It's fun to talk about, and like I said, Scorsese has had a bunch of them over the years. These are the two most notable, I would say, because he, as we were saying, with Silence and other movies, he sticks to a lot of his passion projects and will try to get them made if he really, really wants to get them made. But as you were saying, when he's more for hire, or if somebody brings it to him, which is in the case of Warner Brothers, they suggested it, he's not going to fight that battle, any harder than he needs to, because it's maybe not something that he was counting on.
Yeah. And that would be the best. Yeah, that should be a topic sometime, of like films that were in pre-production with one director that eventually got taken over by a different director, and how that changed things. Because I think actually Scorsese was one of the people that was originally in line for like Schindler's List, and Spielberg was going to direct Cape Fear, and then he's like, I'm the wrong guy, and they swapped. And now it seems like, duh, of course, but
yeah,
necessarily like that at the time, and these things happen in strange ways.
And in the movie Mank, which I haven't finished yet, but there was a comment in there about the Wizard of Oz and the topic of switching directors, because I think they make a comment in the movie about how it'll be a disaster, that production, which is funny in retrospect. But
there are a bunch of good, and Mank is a great one, because I feel like those are a little bit. There is a guy who plays Orson Welles, and that's a little bit more distinct speech that movie fans will know. Herman Mankiewicz, a little less so. But yeah, I still think we need a good Audrey Hepburn biopic. Not that
I would agree with that.
Not the Jennifer Love Hewitt TV movie. That was was not good, but I got their approval.
I was today years old when I learned that she played Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, really? I'll send it to you.
I'm gonna post a picture about that.
3 hours. I think it's 3 hours, and I think there's a scene where she passes Tiffany's, and she looks in the window, and you'll know right then if you're going to continue watching.
Now I have to watch it. So, on that note, let us know if there's any movies that were never made that you'd like us to talk about. Let us know what you think about the Sinatra or the Dean Martin biopic that didn't get off the ground. But for Erik, my name is Chad. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.